Formula 1 2001 was developed by Studio 33, also responsible for Formula 1 99, that would see releases on the PlayStation 2 alongside of the original PlayStation in the year 2001, that provided all of the gameplay elements to reflect the season of that year. And in some cases, especially with the PS2 edition, there was a DVD that was developed and released alongside of the game that provided an overview or review of the 2000 championship season with race by race commentary. It followed a very similar format to Formula 1 2000, with adding in a new variety of features along with a challenge mode that allowed you to play and compete for the quickest lap times, as at the time you would be given a verification code to post online to see if you could compete with other members to see who had the quickest or the fastest time in the world. Now, this was at a time when the internet wasn't as freely available and things weren't set up the way like they are now, where it's easy to post stuff online. Back then it wasn't the case. You literally still had to use magazines, references, codes just to gain any sort of feedback. Even though technology was evolving, it still had to play catch up in many ways. With that being said, this was definitely one of the later additions in the Formula 1 series, pretty much across the board on the PlayStation, and it's a solid game all round, although it wasn't as highly reviewed compared to previous games. It was kind of getting to a point at this stage, very like other sports games. If you look at the likes of football and other types of games in a similar calibre, every year or year on year there'd be a new edition, which in many cases didn't really evolve much over the previous edition. They would just sugarcoat it a little bit and just add a few extra tweaks and features. And you could say that Formula 1 followed a similar format, especially in the later entries. Now, it did actually add extra bits that weren't in previous editions, and it did make tweaks to the visuals, and it had updated character rosters and teams and so forth. So there was a lot of elements in place. But again, games just didn't get as well received in magazines compared to previous games for whatever reason. But in this time as well, you would also start to see the likes of various sponsors related to like substances like alcohol, tobacco and so forth be censored from these games, which was starting to happen in real life events as well anyway. So it was reflective of that to some degree. And while during the development stage of the game, it was created with the help of actual Formula 1 teams with the likes of Benetton, Jaguar, Jordan and Arrows, that also helped to aid in the overall development to make sure everything was up to scratch. Now, there are differences obviously between the PlayStation 1 and the PlayStation 2 editions in terms of overall visual appeal, and you could generally compare the two in many ways in terms of how they play and feel, but they both offered something different and presented a unique experience, but also gave players or fans of the game a chance to play it on either console that they would have had access to at the time. So you would have had all the tracks as well from that season, along with all of the official cars, drivers. You even had the mix of weather conditions that would change from sunny to overcast, even with rain, and it would definitely affect the way the car handled and drove. But even in terms of the visuals, like if we look back even at the earlier games, and even with other games like Formula 1 99 and Formula 1 2000, which were graphically very, very impressive, but I have to say, even with Formula 1 2000, they definitely did step up the mark with regards to the overall visuals. Like, in fairness to it, especially on the models of the cars themselves, they're among some of the best ever seen in a racing game on the PlayStation. In all fairness, they really are. It's a very, very good looking game.
It's often seen as the result of a crash. The yellow flag will warn of debris or oil on the track, or that a damaged car is blocking the way.
It's a very good all-round solid experience, in fairness. Like, if you've ever played any of the previous Formula 1 titles, which I have covered before on the channel, I'll leave links below in the description, and some of those games are absolutely phenomenal and they're legendary. And while this may not have matched the same appeal as those games, it more than makes up for it for its visual presentation, as, like I said, it is one of the best looking racing games ever seen on the PlayStation, in my opinion. It really is. And it has really good handling dynamics, good use of physics. Again, the weather really does help with that as well to make it feel more realistic. Like, it has a lot more going for it than people even realise, and I suppose when we look back at it, I think really at the time we didn't appreciate these games as much as we should have done. But looking back, these games genuinely are a lot better than what we originally thought. Like, for all intents and purposes, it may not have reviewed as high as other Formula 1 games in the series on the PlayStation, but in saying that, I genuinely believe that it's one of the best games or racing games on the PlayStation, hands down, in terms of what it provides and overall value. And just even in looks alone is more than enough. But again, everybody's opinions will be different. Some will like it, some won't. I suppose at this point, many players will have moved on from a lot of these games, or still prefer to even play the older ones, or at this stage, really in general, a lot of players would have moved on to the PlayStation 2, which would have been most of us in many cases. But that's not to say that these games are bad. If anything, the fact is that the PlayStation was still producing games of this quality and caliber back then was truly astounding, and it shows how great of a console it was. But I'd love to know your thoughts of Formula 1 2001 for the PlayStation if you have played it yourself, and what do you think of it overall? Would this be your favourite Formula 1 game on the PlayStation, or what other games in the series are you a big fan of? So be sure to share it down in the comments below. And if you would like to see more content around other types of Formula 1 games also released on the PlayStation, then you can check out this playlist here on screen to see more of those games in action. And as always, keep those gaming memories alive.